Hi everyone. In this video, I am going to explain the changes I made for this overview of this study. The original is this one. And in this segment, I am just going to explain the changes. And at the end of the segment, you will find a time-lapse video with the process itself. Okay. So let's start with something very foundational, which is the tilt of the head. And if you see the notes, you will note that there is a cross. The y-axis and the x-axis are very close to the original. However, the reference, in the original, that teal and that eye line is not matching. So what I will suggest is to bring your stylus or your pencil to the reference and try to mimic that tilt and bring that angle back to your canvas or to your paper to be accurate with your tilt, okay? I don't believe studies have to be a perfect copy of the reference. However, that aspect, as I mentioned, is very foundational. It's very important to have that right. So try to do that cross and try to keep it that way as you progress to the study, because that's the basis of the feeders, that's the basis of the construction of the head. So try to get it right. Okay. um, Another aspect I noticed right away was with the ear in the original. This is a very limited value study. You are just using black and white, and you don't have range enough to do that bounce light of the reference. So you just need to keep fusing the shadows as you did here in the other shadow groups, and bring that ear shape into completely shadows. If we go back to the overpaint, I mostly did that. I put some very small highlight because the hairstyle might warrant that kind of highlight, and it signals the corner of the ear, but it's not a blown out highlight as it was in the original. Okay. There is also some rim light, which I think is very important because you are bringing the background as part of the portrait and making a more cohesive piece. So yeah, be aware of the limitations of your value range and try to adapt to those limitations. Okay, try to group those shadows. And I am not saying that using two values is a bad practice. It's not at all. It actually very important because contrast is what gives you that three-dimensionality. Is how you convey how form turns in space, showing the planes, which planes are in shadows, which planes are in light. The separation of lights and shadow is very important. And I have noticed it with some works I have reviewed in the past that some patrons tend to mush those values too much. They mingle the values to the point that the contrast is lost and the forms don't turn. So here, for example, even in the original, you can see that the forms are turning. You can sense the light direction coming from the upright, top right the corner. So yeah, you just wanted to be very emphatic about that. It's not about bad practice. I tend to use a bit more values in my limited range studies, but this is okay. It's very difficult, as you can see. There are some misappreciations, but if you keep at it, I think your rendering skills are going to improve a lot. Um, okay, let's move to overlap order. I think the overlap indicates, as I have explained it in the past, which forms are in front, which are in the back. So here, for example, in the original, the masseter seem way too big compared to the original. In the original, is the cheek itself, the zygomatic arch, which is wide enough to create an overlap that overrides this other order. Okay, that is going to depend on the race, it's going to depend on the each individual. And in this case, if you want to be more faithful to the reference, you need to keep that overlap. It's very subtle, and I can see why my Patreon probably misappreciated that overlap. But be very attentive, okay, about that, because indicating order is very important to convey form. Okay, let's move to mimicking different kinds of edges. Okay, again, this is a very limited value range, as limited as it can be, actually. So, in this case, for example, in the Rembrandt triangle, which is this kind of triangle that occurs a lot in this kind of portraits and this kind of lighting scheme, we have a drop shadow that is being casted by the bridge of the nose, and we have also the foreshadow of the cheek. So that the combination of those two shadows is going to form that Rembrandt triangle. However, you have to be aware that the cast shadow of the nose is going to be very sharp, as most cast shadows are, especially when they in their origin point. And the cheek shadow is not a drop shadow; it's a form shadow. So form shadow are going to be softer, so in order to keep that edge, or at least convey that edge, because I cannot keep it because the range of values is very limited, I did some hatching, as you can see. So if we zoom out, you will notice how that hatching is going to look softer than this edge here. Okay, and you can see it all over the place. For example, here in the eyes, at the top of the bridge of the nose, in the keystone, and many other areas when I need some more nuance despite the limited value range. Okay, so be attentive of that. And let's move to another thing I noticed is the highlights. I can see that you saw the reference and trying to keep those highlights in order is going to be a bit difficult, because at first it may seem that there is no a semblance of order. However, you are making art, you are being selective about it, you are choosing those elements in nature that are important to you, and you are trying to convey that to the viewer. So here, for example, I was not accurate with my highlights. I just saw the kind of hairstyle in the reference, and I tried to convey that hairstyle through the highlights. And not only that, I tried to make an order of those highlights. As you can see, these shapes I choose for my highlights. There is a reasoning behind them. Okay. For example, this section here is more like a rim light, okay? And this one here is like a corner. It's the corner you see when the hair strand is going vertically and then more horizontally when it's changing planes, okay? So here it's more apparent, it's more exaggerated than the reference, but it's conveying the same feeling, okay? So try to not be this random. Try to establish some order, despite not seeing at first on the reference. It's very important to be attentive. Try to be very focused on your process, and you will start to notice those patterns. Okay. Uh, as I mentioned it before, when I was speaking about the ear, you should try to make the background be part of the reference. Okay. Here, for example, you will notice many broken lines, and those broken lines are allowing that background, that pure white background, to be part of the character. Okay, you are making something more tied together. You are creating a clearer sense of unity by doing that. So here it's effective to a point. However, you run the risk of making something that looks like a sticker on top of a background. Okay, here you have a more cohesive unity. Okay, let's see. Another thing I noticed was with the shirt, it's very dark, almost no strong highlights there. So here in the original, I commend the attempt to make something of those very weak highlights in the reference and try to invent, which is tied together to what I was saying earlier, to not be too accurate with the reference, but you have to keep some core elements, some foundational elements. So I commend the invention. However, the problem is that you are making, with these highlights, you are making the arm, the one that's near to us, a bit too wide, okay? Especially because I read this section here, for example, as a sleeve, and that's going to look almost as thick at the head, as you can see. So I try to keep those highlights and make that sleeve a bit thinner because you are conveying a very androgynous character, and you have to balance those feathers, which is a bit of a challenge here because if it were a very clearly masculine character, a very clearly feminine character, you could have exaggerated certain feathers, but here you have to keep a balance to make a more accurate representation of the reference. Okay, so yeah, that's more or less the important aspect I wanted to explain here. Uh, I will add the time lapse as I mentioned it. If you are interested in my feedback, you can become a patron of the critic tier, and you will receive 4 reviews per month. Each review comes with an overpay, the notes, and the timelapse video. You can contact me over Discord, ask me questions, and you will also have access to all my Patreon exclusives. That there are tons of them. I post like 3 to 4 times per week, so you are going to have those too. And if you want to watch other videos, other explanation like this one of pieces that I cannot post in social media because they are non-safe for work, you can become a torture tier patron. You will have access to my process videos, my notes, my source files, and all my other Patreon exclusives. Okay. So yeah, I hope this has been useful for you, and I hope to see you later too. Bye.